What's up, party people, and welcome to a brand new episode of Just Three with Joe. Of course, as always, got an exciting show lined up for everybody. My guest this week is a writer. He covers a lot more than just sports. He is Mr. O.J. Spivey of the Philadelphia Tribune. We're going to have a great conversation, talk a little bit about sports, talk about his career, and just chop it up like we always do on Just Three with Joe. Let's not waste any time. Let's just get right into the conversation with O.J. And like we do each and every week, a great guest always lined up. This week is no different. At this time, I want to welcome to Just Three with Joe. You might have seen his work with the Philadelphia Tribune. I want to go ahead and introduce Mr. O.J. Spivey.
Hey, how you doing, Joe?
Doing pretty good, man. How you doing, brother?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Like I told you, man, I had this one lined up for a while.
Yes,
That's the one to have you on.
Long time coming. Glad to be here.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, you, my friend, are in a hotbed of sports. I mean, living in the city of Philadelphia. So let's just start talking about the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, obviously, Ben Simmons saga is over, or at least we think it's over. They bring over James Harden. Things start off great. You got people jumping out the window saying that that's the best duo since Shaq and Kobe with Embiid and Harden. All of a sudden, that game comes against Brooklyn. You had the Ben Simmons coming back to Philadelphia storyline. By the end of the first quarter, we all forgot about that. That was just an old school take them behind the woodshed beatdown. Right. What's your take on this, on the new Sixers, the Ben Simmons, the whole situation?
Well, first thing is you go back to the trade and you go back to the weeks and months going up to the trade. It was just a lot of buzz, man. It was a lot of anxiety, and people just wanted to just get Ben Simmons out of town. And for whatever reason, and for the longest time, it was like, okay, go after Bradley Beal, go after guys on the Kings like Halliburton or Buddy Hield. Get somebody. You go all the way back. It started with Damian Lillard. It's like, okay, let's get Damian Lillard. But none of that happened. None of that manifested. And you had the relationship there with Daryl Morey and James Harden. So things heated up. And, last month they were able to pull off the trade, get Ben Simmons out of here. Of course, they had to give up Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and, a couple of first-round picks and all. So it's been exciting up until this point, up until I would say last Thursday. But they had they had a hiccup with the Brooklyn Nets, who just kind of, hopefully they didn't expose them, but I know we'll get into that in a bit. But they were able to recover with their last game against Orlando. They have a big game with Denver. We'll see how that goes. Sort of almost like the MVP battle with Embiid and Jokic.
Yeah.
So it's just some concerns about, my personal concerns is their transition defense and their consistent shooting. Because when they traded Seth Curry, that was their most consistent shooter.
Thank you.
And he was even streaky at times, but he looks like he's found a home in Brooklyn. So with him feeding off of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and then you have Andre Drummond rebounding and, just pounding inside, knowing what they need to do, the dirty work and stuff. It's going to be something to see as the Nets kind of try to climb their way out of the 8th spot and try to move up to get out of the play-in. But as it stands now, the Sixers are currently the 2 seed. As we speak. The Nets are the 8th seed. So the Nets come out of that play-in game, you have a crash course. And I'm not sure if Sixers fans want to see that right now as of Thursday night. And as far as Ben Simmons is concerned, you've had a lot of discourse, a lot of anger as far as fans, not only Sixers fans, but, NBA fans, as far as, what is going on. And there's been a question of, okay, how much is his mental issues sincere? But honestly, just looking back and doing more research, and a lot of things aren't talked about. He has had some family issues that hasn't been talked about and really hasn't been confirmed by any reporting or any journalists at this point. I do personally think that there is something going on with him.
Yeah, I
You
do
just
too.
can't pinpoint what it is. I don't know if that has truly affected him to, stay off the court, what have you. Should they have handled it a little better? He and his agent, Rich Paul, I think so. But it's a tricky thing, and in this day and age where more athletes are vocal about their mental health, I just yeah, and I'm not a doctor, and I try to caution, especially as a journalist, I
Yeah,
try
for
to
sure.
caution
Yeah.
people from going one way or the other. And most people who are diagnosing him and saying, oh yeah, he's faking and everything, they're not even qualified. I
Yeah.
mean, they're not even qualified as a journalist, let alone a fan, or someone with the organization, PR, all those things. So I just wish the best for him. Of course, you want to see him on the court because we're all fans at
Yeah. He's a
heart.
great player.
Yeah, exactly. So, and he's actually he's kind of what they're missing defensively right now. But we'll see
I
if
was
they
gonna. I had
overcome
that written down.
but we'll see if they overcome it, because when they played the Knicks, when they played Cleveland, they were able to overcome those deficits because they can just outscore those guys.
Yeah.
And those are younger teams. They don't have as much of a veteran presence. But when you go toe to toe with the Miamis of the world,
Yep.
Brooklyn, and everything, they're going to have a little tougher time digging out of these slow starts. So hopefully, they kind of figure it out in that aspect.
Now, do you think that the 76ers gave up too much in the trade? Because you talked about Steph Curry being like the only consistent shooter. I think about what Andre Drummond did as far as being a backup big. I understand James Harden, one of the greatest scorers of all time, but I kind of feel like, I don't know. And obviously, we won't find out until we get into the playoffs, but it kind of feels like Philadelphia might have gotten the bad end of this deal, even without Ben Simmons setting foot in the court yet.
Well, I think still time will tell. I think in the long run, it'll benefit the Nets better than it'll benefit the Sixers,
Yeah,
because they have a bit of a 2-year window. And
true.
James Harden is not a spring chicken anymore. Was he
No.
32, 33 years old?
Yeah.
Well, I
I
think
didn't
he's
even know
older than
that.
that,
I didn't realize
but
that.
right, yeah. So yeah, he's well in his 30s now. So um, my my concern is what Harden's done in the past. And when I try to mention that with people, social media, or just in personal circles, like, oh man, he's a better shooter than, at least he'll shoot. He's not he's the anti Ben Simmons. So
Yeah.
this is why most fans were all in, just because we're getting a guy, Philly, that is willing to shoot. And when I watched Orlando the last game, he wasn't that willing to shoot,
Yeah.
and he's had some
Or
terrible
the
last two
Brooklyn game,
games.
for that
Right,
matter.
exactly. So, but people just wanted him out of here, Ben Simmons out of here, and bring in James Harden, and kind of overlooking his flaws.
Yeah.
And basically, where I come from, a scammer is a scammer. So, I mean, it's maybe just only a matter of time until we see the James Harden of old. Hopefully, it's more later than sooner. And I just don't think overall Sixers are that complete team where they can go finals. They can go finals or bust. And I think when they made this trade, that kind of upped the ante to where, okay, you've
Yeah, you're
raised the
right.
bar. You've given up all these guys, and you're bringing in a superstar of James Harden, one of the 75 greatest players of all time, and you're pairing him with Joel Embiid. You want to see how it works, and it's worked so far.
Yeah.
But these last two games is like,
Yeah. Starting to see a little bit of chinks in the armor.
what's going to happen, with on long term. And my biggest fear is with that Brooklyn game. Of course, you have to have the personnel to execute. But my fear with the Brooklyn game, listen, hopefully that isn't a blueprint for how to
Yeah.
defend and beat the Sixers, because, I mean, they were pushing the ball. I mean, they were doing all types of things offensively, exposing the Sixers defensively. And, when that happens, it's kind of hard for Philly on the other side to get into a rhythm offensively. And, we'll see what happens as the playoffs go on. We have less than 20 games to go. So this
Yeah.
next month of the season, we're going to learn a lot. And that being said, though, Joe, no doubt in my mind that they'll still be a top 3 seed. So
Oh
that's
yeah,
going to
for
be a
sure.
good
For
thing.
sure.
And I don't
Yeah.
even think they care at this point if they are a number 1 seed, because that puts that much pressure on them.
True.
We saw what happened last year, even though they had a couple horses in and out, but you saw when they got eliminated from the playoffs in the second round against an Atlanta team, they were the number 1 seed, so they don't need to have that pressure this year.
Yeah, not for sure. Another guy, too, on the 76ers who I just think is wildly inconsistent, man. Tobias Harris will give you like 2 games and you're like, why is he not an all-star? And then he'll have 2 more. You're like, get rid of this bum. The same way people feel about Ben Simmons in Philly, I'm sure they feel the same way about Harris from game to game.
Well, that's one of the things that I thought was going to happen, not necessarily with Tobias Harris, but someone on that team would be the odd man out early on. And they're trying to figure, last couple games, they've tried to figure it out. Actually, when they played Orlando, I keep going back to this game, but when they played Orlando, if it wasn't for Tobias Harris, they would have lost easily.
Yeah.
But we figured out how is it going to work, because again, when you have a number of guys who are used to getting their shots, used to having the ball in their hands, or trying to create shots, there's only one basketball, and that's up to Doc Rivers to try to make that work. And it's a lot of pressure on him as well, because the honeymoon is over here in Philadelphia with Doc Rivers, even though this is his second year as the head coach of the Sixers, but he has to find a way to figure it out. Of course, things aren't going to change with Embiid. He's going to get his shots, no question. It's his team, and I do like what Harden has done so far as being more of a facilitator and making sure Embiid has the ball. And also another concern too is, Maxi's been a little lost within these past couple of games. First handful of games, Harden was able to feed Maxi. He was able to find his spots, but he's kind of getting lost in the shuffle too. So as we watch the Sixers in these next few weeks, we got to see what happens night after night with a Maxi and with a Tobias Harris. And I also see with Harden too. He's been more of a facilitator, which I like, and we know, he's had a history of kind of hogging the ball.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
He has to learn how to, and this is still a learning curve. He still has to learn how to pick his shots too. But I would like for him to get better shots, because he's shooting a lot of jumpers, and if he's not, he's just trying to go to the basket and not really finish, but just trying to force a foul. And I don't think that's a recipe for success in this trade.
Well, I like him as a facilitator, because I think with that, maybe that can save some energy. Because I know a lot of times in the playoffs, I felt like with James Harden, besides possibly being injured, he runs out of gas a lot in the playoffs. So I think if you're a facilitator, it's not on you to score 45, 50 points for your team to win.
Right.
You can pick your spots. And in the fourth quarter, you can be that closer.
Right. And that's probably why they made this trade, because they're going to need that closer. But again, past couple games, these close games, it's really been Tobias Harris who's been that closer. So it may be a blessing in disguise where perhaps Harris is not getting his shots or struggling a bit to try to find his way. But maybe crunch time, it may be a Harden to Tobias Harris, because, they're going to try to double Embiid and deny him the ball. And, again, see how they mix in Maxi. And, you have to understand, too, that Maxi's still a very young player as well. This is only his second year in the league. So it's still a learning curve for him, even though he's made a lot of strides and, he can easily put up 20 points. He's a fearless young man, but he's still learning the game.
Yeah, I would love for him to have a big playoff. I think if he has a big playoff, he'll have even a more expanded role next season for Philadelphia, because he's a talented guy.
He'll be the X factor, no question.
Yeah, not for sure. And look at the rest of the East. I mean, I don't want to say it's wide open, but it's very top heavy, in my opinion. I mean, Philadelphia, you got your Miami Heat, the return of the Chicago Bulls. Besides them, I'd say, I guess you could say a team like a Charlotte. I'm not a believer in Atlanta. I don't know about you. I just think that live by the three, die by the three mentality. You saw how much they've been struggling so far this season. Unless you're on a first round or second round elimination for the Hawks, is pretty easy, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. I think, it's one thing to say wide open, but I think you said it right. It's very top heavy, because you do have to begin with Miami, Milwaukee, Philly, and Chicago. I'm not sure about.
Oh, really?
As well, even though they've had a great season, and DeMar DeRozan, he's in the MVP conversation. But when I've only been able to see them so much, and you would think they would be on television more.
Yeah.
Having that resurgence in the market that they're in. But when I've seen them a couple times with playing the Sixers, it's like, I don't know if they're ready for prime time just yet. But the team that I think we have to look out for is Boston. They got off to an extremely slow start. I know they had some injuries early, new coach, but I mean, these guys are looking like they're getting up for the playoffs. And if I had to pick one team in the East who no one wants to play in the first round, I
I would
think
agree
that
with
would be
that. Yeah.
Boston.
Yeah. Jason
Because
Tatum's
you
been
never, yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah, yeah. Tatum has he's he's raised it up a notch. You know what you're going to get from Jaylen Brown. They have good role players as well, so you kind of know, they've kind of figured it out now, and that's going to be a deadly matchup for anybody who gets Boston in the first round.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And then nobody talks about the Miami Heat. All they do is just go out there and win. I mean, it might not be the
That's all
prettiest
they do.
basketball,
That's
but
all they
they
do.
they
It's
lock
not
you up.
pretty, right? It's not pretty. It's not glamorous. Of course, they're well coached with Eric Spoelstra, but you have Butler, you have Adebayo. I mean, you got to have Tyler Hero, who's
Yeah,
their X factor, and and also Kyle Lowry, who gives them that,
yeah.
he gives them that grit.
That's a big
That
piece
was
right there. I didn't.
yeah,
He's one of
that was
those guys that, at least for me, I forget how good he is until it matters. Like playoff times, I'm like,
yeah,
oh man,
man.
he's really, really good.
Well,
But
look,
during the
he's from
season, I'm
here. He's
like,
from Philly, so he's Philly tough. I mean, he
yeah.
comes from that long line of tough Philly basketball players. So, he's given them that grit that they may have lost, that they maybe didn't have last year, coming back from being in the finals in that bubble against the Lakers. So, um, a lot of people pick Milwaukee as the front runner to repeat coming out of the East, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Miami as well because they have so many ways to beat you, and again, they're well coached. You're really not going to outcoach Eric Spoelstra at this point.
Yeah, Milwaukee to me, it's like I mean, I guess you could say it's about a lot of NBA teams, but some nights I'm like, man, a repeat is in the cards. And other nights I'm like, there's no way these guys are going to make it back to the finals. And then I think today they get back Brook Lopez, which is a big piece.
Oh yeah, he's definitely a big piece, and just him being his presence in the middle, he's going to open things back up for Giannis, and open things back up for Middleton, for all what they like to do offensively. So yeah, and he does give him some rebounding as well. And speaking of rebounding, it's one of the other concerns that I had about Philly, but because losing Andre Drummond, they lose
Yeah.
that rebounding edge. I mean, Embiid, he's going to average 10, 11, 12 rebounds a game. Harden's going to give you 8. But I went back and looked back at their last 4 games, and they've been out rebounded in every single game.
Oh, wow.
Hopefully, DeAndre Jordan kind of makes up for that a little bit, but they're still getting out rebounded by at least 10 a game.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. DeAndre Jordan's still in the league.
He's still hanging on, and just anything that he can give to the Sixers, and anything that he can give to spell Embiid, because that's another concern. Although he's been super healthy this year,
Yeah.
and hasn't been out in any extended period of time, so hopefully that'll continue, and DeAndre Jordan will give him the kind of rest and spell him for a few minutes as needed.
Now, before we go on to our next topic, and I didn't tell you this in the pre-show notes, but I know you got an opinion on it. Zion Williamson, high draft pick, highly touted out of Duke. We all thought he was going to be the next whoever. Obviously, battling injuries, and now social media, public appealing, just piling on this kid. And he is a kid. I think he's going to come back with a revenge tour that people are going to remember for a long time, whether it be the end of this season or next season. I mean, seeing some of the videos and pictures, I don't see this big, out-of-shape guy everybody's been talking about. And I think in between the rehab, I would hope he's been working on this game as well. What are your thoughts on Zion in the limited time you got to see him?
Well, with Zion, of course, as you said, he's a very talented player. He can take over a game, very powerful. I mean, when he's healthy, he's almost like a mini Shaq.
Yeah.
So, and I know that's high praise, but that's just the first thing that comes to mind, kind of like Shaq Jr. or,
Yeah.
Something along those lines. But the number one thing for him is health. And I thought with him coming out of Duke, and I know he had, certain issues with his weight and everything. He's kind of a little top heavy.
Yeah.
and everything. And it's good. I thought the main thing with him coming out of Duke is how is he going to handle his footwork? And I know he's had foot issues, and I mean that can be the devil, man. I mean
Yeah.
we've seen
That's
that with
Greg Oden.
hopefully, you hate to bring up the Greg Oden, the ghost of Greg Oden being injured and stuff, and maybe even going way back in the day to Bill Walton.
Yeah.
It's a big man injury, and I think even Joel Embiid had problems with his feet
Yeah.
early on before he could even get on the court in the NBA. But I just pray for his health because the NBA needs him,
Yeah.
whether that's in New Orleans or somewhere else, because whoever gets the prize, and I don't know about the inklings of him possibly wanting out of New Orleans. That's probably just rumors at this point.
Yeah.
But it's going to be great for whoever gets him, whether that's down in the Bayou or somewhere else, because again, the NBA needs him. He'll be good for the league.
Now, you said that tonight, and you're right, we have a matchup with Jokic and Embiid, the battle of the MVPs. If you had a vote today, who is your MVP so far this season for the NBA? Because I'm still sticking with Embiid.
Yeah, I'm still sticking with Embiid as well. But voting with this the past couple of years has been kind of tricky. And I thought last year that Embiid should have won. I won't say he should have won. He could have won had he played maybe a handful more games.
Yeah.
And they take that seriously. So hopefully, that's one less thing that the voters can use against him. And I think when you just look at the majority of the season, and this is how you should vote, and we have we have the majority of the games done.
Yeah.
And you look at what Joel Embiid has accomplished even before Harden got there, and keeping the Sixers as a top 4 seed
Absolutely. Yeah.
without doing what he's done, what he's accomplished without Ben Simmons, and also for him leading the league in scoring.
Yeah.
And it's not like he's had to put up 50 like Jason Tatum or LeBron James these past couple of games. I mean, he's been consistent, scoring 30, 35, 40 points, and it's all been within the aspects of the game, and he's just pretty much done it with ease. And basically, he's an unguardable player.
Yeah.
You talk about that and all, and for me, I just look at, okay, what would the Sixers be without Embiid,
Great
without a
question.
Harden, and what has happened, for the majority of the season without Ben Simmons? They're basically a lottery team. So
I'd agree with that 100%.
could you say the same with Jokic over in Denver? I know he's missing,
Jamal
he's
Murray.
missing
Yeah.
Murray, and I forget the other
Michael
guy that
Porter
did.
Jr.
Okay,
Yeah.
Porter,
Yep.
exactly. So, he's missed those two guys. So that's something to be, that's going to be good for his back pocket for for the NBA voters, and just all depends how they view centers now. I
That's a good
thought,
point, actually.
yeah,
Way to bring
I
that up.
thought
Yeah,
also, yeah, I thought also John Morant, he's in the conversation, and as
for
we talked
sure.
about earlier, DeMar DeRozan's in the conversation as well. But how do these voters look at a center? Do they look at a point center? As they do with Jokic, Mr. Triple Double. I mean, Embiid's had a couple triple doubles too,
Yeah.
but that's not really his game. But he's about as classic a center as you're going to get. I mean, he has a little bit of Hakeem in him. He has a little bit of Ewing in him with his long jumpers, and and he can just pound it in the middle like Shaq does. So that's what I like about Embiid. He does a little bit of everything of what your classic centers have done.
Yeah,
So
I would
we'll
say
see
that.
what happens.
I would say one of the advantages that Joel Embiid has, though, to your point, is in an era where everyone's shooting 50-footers and 3-pointers and every lot of stuff, he is still able to use a traditional big man game and dominate. And if you want him to shoot threes, he can shoot them when it's in rhythm, when it works for him. But he can
Right.
also mid range, take you in the post and abuse you. For him to be able to play 90s style basketball, if you will, in an era where that's not supposed to be working, I think that should be to his advantage.
Yeah, and he's still one of the best post players
Yep.
in this era, if not the best.
Yeah, I'd say he's the best. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he can do it all. And like I said, it's not fashionable to be a center as Joel Embiid. And I even questioned a couple of years ago, can you win a championship with someone who plays like Embiid? But I mean, they're on that track. We'll see what happens. But I'm with you. I still have if I had a vote, I would still go with Embiid.
Yeah, I think tonight, even though it's only one game, tonight might go a long, long way if it's a dominant performance to kind of be one of those things to stick in the voters' minds. Like, man, when we had the head-to-head matchup on national television, we saw how it ended. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, either way, so we're going to run with it. Whether Embiid has a great game and wins, or it's the other side with Jokic. So everybody's going to run with it either way.
Oh, you already know that. You already know tomorrow morning and tonight, Twitter's going to be on fire.
Yes, sir.
Switching up topics, today was the beginning of the NFL free agency, and holy moly, I mean, it was like 12:01. The deals just started flying through. I see the Eagles got a pass rusher. I see my Washington Commanders, still hard to say that, lost our best offensive lineman going to Jacksonville.
Not saying commies yet.
Nah, later we start losing to you guys, and I'm going to start saying the commies along some other words.
I understand.
But the money has been flying to some of these guys. Some interesting deals. I mean, you had his name, it's Kirk, the third wide receiver 3 from Arizona. Getting $84 million. I know it's the market, but just I know what he did in the field. I'm just like, Jacksonville is really putting a lot of faith in this guy to take his game to a next level. I guess start with your Eagles and kind of what you want to see this offseason and some of the signings you saw today that might have caught your attention as well.
Well, when I talk about my hometown Eagles, first thing is I have to talk about Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
And quite frankly, there's not a lot of love for Jalen Hurts. The people who basically run media here in this city, they're not in love with him. Even some fans are not in love with him. It's almost like split 50-50. It's like, okay, he is the guy, he's not the guy, or, let's give him another year to kind of see, how he improves, how he evolves. But listen, I'm a Jalen Hurts fan, and I thought when they drafted him back in, was it 2019?
Yeah.
2019. I thought it was a potential steal because I knew for some odd reason that he would end up playing and he would end up being a good pro. And he's exceeded at, no matter the chatter that, folks may hear out of Philadelphia, he's exceeded expectations. When I tell you, no one had the Eagles winning more than 6 games last year, and that was high.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
I
was
saw
seeing a lot of 4s out there.
5 games, 4 or 5 games, some people even 3. So for him to, exceed that expectation, that says a lot about him. And, he exuded confidence the day that he walked in that locker room, even when Carson Wentz was there. And that's kind of why, Wentz has kind of bounced around these last 2 years because I mean, he sensed that. And, I don't know if and this is just in regular circles or even in business and everything, when someone walks in that boardroom and they exude that confidence, or they walk in that locker room, they exude that confidence. And, when you have someone in there who's insecure, that's not going to bode well for them. So
for sure.
That's kind of my understanding. That's kind of what went down in Philadelphia. And, Carson Wentz just wanted to say, maybe he tried to make up for saying, okay, I got this young confident guy looking out over my shoulder, and I have to make up for this. I got to play hero ball, do this, that, and the third. But next thing you know, he's in Indy. Now he's in DC.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I was talking to somebody at work yesterday, and I said that, in my opinion, Carson Wentz is better than Tyler Heineke. I like that. But, man, some of the mistakes, the ball decisions, like the physical tools, you would think Wentz, man, he's a big guy, strong arm, fearless. But then I just go back to the shovel pass, the throwing the balls in the double teams, the injury. Ever since Aaron Donald and them boys broke his back, he's just never been the same.
Yeah.
And then you just talked about it too.
Yeah.
Confidence.
Yeah. Well, listen, he's going to compete. Okay. He's definitely going to compete. He's going to give it his all. But sometimes he just has to stay within the offense, or stay within the game, have a feel. At times, he just doesn't have a feel for the game. And, you look at his stats, where he have like 26 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions.
Yep.
But you saw whenever he made a mistake, whether it was an interception or a fumble, it was at a crucial time of the game. or a crucial time of the field. And, it's just an enigma, so to speak. And hopefully, he may get it. Hopefully not against the Eagles twice, of course. But
that would probably be his two
you
worst
know,
games. I'm not gonna lie. He'll probably
my
be overthinking it so much.
right. So the big concern is Frank Reich was his boy. That was his confidant. That was his mentor.
Yeah.
And if Frank Reich couldn't get him right, if he fell out of Frank Reich, he went on record and said, I stuck my neck out for him.
Yeah. And you didn't make the
And things
playoffs.
like that can get coaches fired.
Yep.
And you had somebody like, you had somebody in the forefront like Jim Irsay or the Colts, he could easily, wake up one morning and fire his whole entire staff. But, that's how tricky this thing is. But overall, Winston's a good guy. And he's going to be, I said this on social media to, other DC fans. I said, he's going to be very charitable in community. He's going to endear himself in the DMV. So, he's going to be great in that aspect. But the football's a little shaky. And you just hope with, whoever they have with their offensive staff, coordinator, quarterback coach, that they can finally get them right. We'll see.
Yeah, and going back to the Jalen Hurts talk too, I'm a huge college football fan, and I mean, when you play for Nick Saban, win national championship, you're able to handle the Tua controversy, be benched, and still be a great teammate, and then you go to another football powerhouse, in Oklahoma with a totally different playing style. We're throwing the ball all over the yard,
right?
And you're successful that way as too. How did you think he was going to get to the NFL and not find a way to be successful? I mean, he played for two elite coaches and two elite programs and was successful.
Yeah. When you look at it, he's played in 4 different offenses the last 4 seasons.
Yep.
Four totally different offenses. Like you said, with Nick Saban, his offense, and I think at that time, who was it? Kiffin?
I think it was Sarkisian for a while.
Okay,
and then they went to Kiffin.
Yep. Right. So I mean, you can count that as 5 if you really want to be technical. So then Lincoln Riley, then Doug Peterson, playing 4 games for Doug Peterson, and then her learning a brand new offense under Nick Sirianni, who, quite frankly, he really didn't know what he was doing first few games either, first half of the season either. So, but just going back to your point and everything, I just think they should just run it back with Hurts and just surround him with more weapons, surround him with a better defense. So when he does have to throw the ball, he doesn't have to outscore everybody every time. And I really like what they started to do today and getting Hassan Reddick. I mean, when I tell you they needed an edge rusher in the worst way, they really did. And getting a hometown guy who went to Temple, bringing Hassan Reddick back home, who's a South Jersey native. Yeah, he's still young, exactly. So that's what they need. I think they're going to probably go edge rusher again in the draft because Fletcher Cox is long in the tooth.
Yeah, I feel like he's been there forever.
Right, God. Right. He goes back to the Andy Reid era. So yes. Ooh. So Brandon Graham coming off an injury, they're probably finally going to say goodbye to Derek Barnett. So the Eagles' Achilles heel is, I mean, they had quarterbacks who would just sit back, brush their teeth, have a shave and everything, and they were just able to, I mean, it was just brutal just to see guys like even David Carr like the Eagles up on defense. So hopefully that changes this year, and we'll see what they do free agency. We'll see if they do in a draft as well as free agency. They had 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, that can get you right quick if you hit on 2 out of 3.
Right, but knowing Howie Roseman's MO, no way he's going to keep all these 3 picks. I think he's going to either do 2 things. I think he's either going to try to package a couple of those picks and move up to the top 10 and maybe get that edge rusher, or I think he's going to trade away one of those picks to kind of put it in his back pocket and try to get in the first round again next year and have multiple picks the following year. I mean, he just loves the wheel and deal. He just can't help himself. We just hopefully that, he'll come out with, guys who could help on defense and maybe add a wide receiver here or there. I'm hearing rumors about Juju Smith-Schuster, so we'll see what happens. That as we saw today, that wide receiver money is, is out the wazoo, and who knows what Devontae Adams is going to get. If Kirk got that money, Listen,
And he refusing to play in the franchise, so they have
I don't
no
blame him.
choice but to get it right. Yeah, you're right.
I don't blame him at all. So I
Yeah,
mean,
me
he
too.
can go to the highest bidder, and maybe what happens with that, even though it's been reported that Aaron Rodgers is going to re-sign with the Packers. I think that's all about what Devontae Adams is going to do.
Yeah, not for sure. And let's stick with football. Tom Brady's back. I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't believe it at all with the retirement talk. I wasn't going to believe it until like week 1. Even during the preseason, if he had stayed retired, I was going to be like, I'm not going to believe it until week 1 starts. And it wasn't even 2 months. My man said, nah, I'm coming back. And of course, social media on fire. But one thing I didn't know until last night, I didn't realize that the Bucs have so many free agents, and they got a lot of holes to fill too. So it's not really a guarantee he'll be back where he
Lots of
was this
holes, right?
season. Yeah.
Right, right. And that's what happens when you kind of go all in past couple seasons. Of course, it was worth it because they did win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, for
They
sure.
came pretty close last year to the Rams, the eventual Super Bowl winner. But I know a lot of people have Tom Brady fatigue, but I like Tom. I like
Yeah.
Tom. I mean, you could criticize him for his so-called politics, who he rubbed shoulders with,
Yeah, it's true.
whoever. But I mean, he's a funny dude, man. I mean, I was getting used to him, making wisecracks on Twitter, being retired for less than 2 months.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to with him giving it another go. I think that's good. That's good for the NFL, and we'll see how he does. I mean, as long as he feels that he can play at a high level, why not? And just by him saying that he's back, that changes the whole aspect of not only his division, the NFC South, it changed the whole aspect of the league. And that's probably going to determine where Deshaun Watson goes.
Yeah.
Because, we have the rumors possibly him going to Carolina, New Orleans. There was even some rumors that Tampa Bay may take a swipe at him with all that's going on. But we'll see what happens. But I like Tom. I
No,
like him.
I'm a big Tom Brady fan too as well.
I think he's witty. I think he's a great competitor. And I seem to like him a lot more at Tampa time more than New England time.
Oh, because we all have Patriots fatigue. I'm so done with them.
Yes,
I still
yes.
wake up in the middle of the night traumatized from that team. So when he went to Tampa Bay, I was the same way. Let's go,
Well,
Tom, all of a sudden.
I kind of like the Patriots when they just started with their
Yeah.
their first couple Super Bowls because they was a cool new team and they were dormant for so many years, even
Yes.
going back to the AFL and everything. But when they started going to Super Bowl year after year after year, of course they beat my Eagles once. Listen, when I tell you, if you see any of us or any Eagles fans still reminiscing about Super Bowl 52, I can't begin to tell you how significant that was because beating Brady, beating Belichick, that game when nobody gave the Eagles a chance. I mean, they're going to, Eagles fans are going to get mad over who the, third string long snapper is. But you mentioned Super Bowl 52 and beating Tom Brady. I mean, that's just the ultimate. And I always tell, fellow Eagles fans, I said, listen, whenever that anniversary comes up, celebrate it because to be one of 2 teams to ever beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, of course, the Giants did it twice.
Yeah.
That's significant because super hard.
Yeah, for sure.
It's super hard to do. And, you're talking about the best quarterback of all time. You're talking about the best head coach of all time. And to beat those guys Super Bowl, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So
I'm not even an
that
Eagles fan, and I still talk about the Super Bowl with Terrell Owens. I'm like, this man had steel rods in his leg, and
they probably should have won that game.
he probably could have had 18 or 20 catches. There's a couple of them that Donovan just didn't give him the ball.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that was Andy Reid with the game plan, everything.
Yeah.
But he's long gone. Good for him winning in Kansas City. But I tell you, when they won that Super Bowl, I was in shock until the parade.
I bet. I can imagine.
I was in total shock until I stepped foot on the grounds of the parade. So
I'm sure by the end of that season, anytime you heard dreams and nightmares, you started twitching.
Even that, and I'll even go one further if I have time.
Yeah, we're good.
That last play, that Hail Mary,
to
Gronkowski. I looked at 3 things. I looked at the ball, the clock, and I look for flags. Because with the Patriots and everything,
Yeah.
with Deflategate, Spygate, I was
Tuck
looking for
rule.
I was looking for anything tricky to give them another play. I was looking for pass interference, holding, anything like that. And it was, it was just amazing. And we had always dreamed of, and of course, Philadelphia has never had a Super Bowl parade, so.
Yeah.
It was more than what we dreamed of. And when I tell you, we almost tore the city apart. We really did. We almost tore it apart. And you saw the thing where the police had to put the grease on the poles and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
That none of that did any good. None of that did any good.
Down here in
But
Washington, it's been a long time. Freaking 1992 when we beat the Bills. Been
right,
forever. And
right.
I'm at the point now, unless Daniel Snyder sells, I don't know if we're going to do it again, man.
Well, I'll put it this way. I know it's felt like forever, Joe, but at least y'all have something to dust off. You can dust
Yeah,
off,
true.
you can polish it, you can always look in the case. And remember, we didn't have any of that. I mean, none of us was even born. Most of us weren't even born the last time they won an NFL championship. So, I mean, what it meant to the city, it was just incredible. And I know, again, we argue about the smallest things as Eagles Twitter and all, but I mean, going back to that Super Bowl, that always gives us a smile. We reminisce, but we're eager for more, of course.
Nah, of course, for sure. Once you get one championship, the natural instinct is to want to get more, for sure. Well, let's talk about something that most people always like talking about, which is themselves, which is a good thing. So, of course, you now writing for the Tribune. Just tell me a little bit about your career, how you got started as a writer, and you do a whole lot more than just sports. Like, kind of, how did that start, and to get to where you are now at this point?
Well, I'll give you the cliff notes because it's a long journey, man.
Okay.
And I mean, we're talking about a 15-year journey, and just starting out, just being young. I'm a bit of a late bloomer, so I mean, I didn't get into this business until my late 30s.
Okay.
So I mean, I always had a love of sports, always had a love of history, culture, all those things, but I never knew how to get in those things. And when I was a kid and everything, they talked about going to college for communications or
Mm.
journalism. And most people that I know coming from Philadelphia who have been successful in the business, they never went to college. But what I did was, I was working one day and I said, listen, I want to pursue this type of thing. I know as much about sports as anybody who's on the air. A lot of jokers on the air and stuff like that. And my first thing that I thought was, okay, I can be just as wrong as these guys that I hear on the radio, that I read in the paper, I see on television. You know what I mean? So I always have to saying that nobody gets paid to be right.
Yeah,
So,
true. I like
but
that.
anyway, to kind of keep the long story short, I went on to broadcast school. I was
Okay.
34 years old. I went to broadcast school. Went to that. Graduated there, and I just thought that okay, I'll get a job in radio and just try to latch on, getting the promotions and everything. But nobody would hire me. Maybe because I was in my mid-30s and everything. Maybe they always give it to interns and everything. So a couple years passed. A friend of mine told me about this new thing called internet radio, online radio.
Okay.
We call it podcasting now,
Yep.
but in those days it was internet radio, where you had to tape everything live, and then it eventually became a podcast.
Yeah.
So I latched on with that, and I believe my co-host Diva D, who I met, still a great friend of
Yep.
mine, and we did the damn thing for like maybe 3 years or so. Guy here in Philadelphia would hear my show, and on a local station here, local black station here, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come in and fill in? Guy that I have, comes late, this, that, and the third. Why don't you come sit in with me, a couple weeks and everything?" And I ended up at the station WURD here in Philadelphia for 4 years,
Okay.
either being a host or a co-host doing the sports show. And just by that opened a lot of avenues for me. And, I was able to get in places and cover different events,
I bet.
whether it be
Yeah.
sports or non-sports. And, I wasn't even getting paid. So, I mean, but, I utilized being in that space.
Yeah, connections, network of people
Yeah,
for
just 'cause-
sure.
yeah, right. So um, even going back to doing my podcast, doing my internet radio, I gained some relationships, and I ended up uh, writing for the Undefeated, which is now was that and I forget the name of it now. They just changed the name,
Yeah, I was trying
but
to
yeah,
find it the
right.
other day and was like, "What's going on right
Right.
now?"
Yeah,
And I
I'll get
figured
it
it
for you in
out.
a
Yeah.
second. But yeah, they just changed within the past 2 weeks. But we'll just call it Undefeated because it was at the time. In fact, a old co-host, an old guest of mine on my podcast had since became one of the editors at the Undefeated. And she had messaged me one day, and I was downtown drinking coffee, and she needed somebody in Philadelphia to do a story for Malcolm Jenkins,
Okay.
and who was with the Eagles at the time, and this is the Black Lives Matter movement just
Yeah.
starting up and everything. Well, I would say in the heart of the core of the Black Lives Matter movement, and I had all I did as far as journalism at the time, even though I had a crash course in broadcast school, all I did was blogging.
Okay.
And I've never written for a national publication before, let alone a local one. And I ended up doing several articles
That's
for,
awesome.
went down there scared as hell, interviewed
That's the
Malcolm
best way to get it
Jenkins.
done.
Right. Yeah, interviewed Malcolm Jenkins and everything, and had it published on Undefeated. And it was excellent because I ended up interviewing Kevin Hart,
Okay.
interviewing Dr. J.
Wow.
Even I don't know if you remember I don't know if you remember the little girl that beat cancer, Leah Still.
Okay. Yeah.
Her
Her
father
father played
played.
football for the
Yeah, her
Bengals.
father
Yeah.
Devin played for the Bengals
Yep.
and everything. I ended up interviewing her mother because no
Okay.
one knew her story. So I ended up, interviewing her mother. So I had a great time doing Undefeated. It's a little difficult because picture stories and everything for them, was difficult. And I got away from it for a little bit. I got away from writing because picture stories is hard, man. It really is.
Yes. Yes.
And
I've never experienced that before.
yeah,
But everyone
yeah.
I've talked
So,
to who's done it tells me
but
it's
yeah,
not easy.
but it, I had a great time, just doing Undefeated and just here and there. I use that to, I won't say to my advantage, but I utilized being undefeated. It got me in different spaces. I was able to cover the Eagles a little bit more so, not so much being a beat writer or anything, but I was able to cover a lot of the special events, and meeting guys like Jason Kelsey,
Okay.
Brandon Graham, more so for like the charity events or different things. I was able to cover training camp, and right after that Super Bowl, that preseason, I was able to interview Brandon Graham and ask him about that strip sack of Tom Brady. And
Very cool.
one of the highlights of my journey, my career, was interviewing Dr. J. Julius Erving. I mean, to watch him as a basketball player for the second half of his career as a kid, and to um, interview him some 30 years later. And listen, when I tell you, I've never been more nervous in my life because I had to overcome. Listen, this is Dr. J, man.
Yeah.
You take any player, you take any Hall of Fame or great player that you grew up watching as a kid, or you grew up watching as a team. I don't know how it is, in DC DMV for you, or that area, Maryland, Virginia. I don't know who that was for you, but
Patrick Ewing, definitely.
right.
My
So
first
yeah,
Georgetown Hoyas post game.
great,
When
yeah,
any questions for Coach
greatest college
Ewing?
basketball player I ever
Yeah.
seen.
When
So, but
any
right,
questions for
so
Coach Ewing? I would just
yeah, exactly. And I know probably just his very presence, like
Yes.
he's just it's like mythical, and
Yeah.
that's how I felt with Dr. J. And like my whole thing was, okay, I just don't want to be an idiot and ask a question. I knew what I had to ask, for my editor, and it's a funny story because about the Big Three League
Yeah.
that Ice Cube started.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. J is one of the coaches there.
Yep. He is.
So I was supposed to interview him that summer because the Big Three had to stop and the tour had to stop in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And, I was waiting for him. They were the last game. So we was waiting 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Both he and Iverson were, we thought they were going to be scheduled to have a press conference. And then I found out they told us, okay, well, no more interviews tonight. We're like, what? And another undefeated colleague of mine, she was there to interview Iverson. So I called my editor the next morning and I said, listen, I emailed my editor. I said, I wasn't able to talk to Dr. J. What do I freaking do? And she just said, just touch base with them and everything, see if you could set up something. And I found out years later that Doc really doesn't do interviews.
Yeah,
He
he
just
doesn't
doesn't do it.
Yeah.
But he has a annual golf classic that he holds every year in this area, the Philadelphia area. It's since moved to Atlantic City now, but his people were very gracious, and he said, listen, in September, he has this big golf gala. We'll invite you to that, and you can have a sit there. You can have an exclusive with him.
Oh, wow.
And this is like a month later. I'm like, okay, bet. So I get there and everything. He comes in the room, and I'm like, this is Dr. J. This is, growing up seeing him with the Converses, growing up seeing him with his afro, doing the Rock the Baby with Michael Cooper, dunking over Bill Walton, finally bringing us a championship in '83 along with Moses. And I'm trying to overcome all this as I'm interviewing with him. And I'm able to sit down. When I tell you that, what was the cool, Stuart Scott said, he was saying, cool was the other side of the pillow.
Yeah.
That's Doc, man, even in his late 60s. He's 70 now, but
yeah,
still the coolest man in the room, still the coolest man on the planet. I thought it was always two guys as coolest guys on the planet, him and Don Cornelius.
Yeah, Don Cornelius always did seem very
I guess you could
chill.
put Walt Frazier there too, but those are like still the coolest guys, big guy Cornelius. But him, Walt Frazier, is still the coolest guys on the planet, man. And I was able to get through the interview. It was one of the best things I've ever done, and I still milk that to this day.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, bro. Milk that thing.
And it was pretty cool too, because I was able to meet Reggie Jackson. I was able to meet Lonzo Mourning, a few other celebrities, and he knows the coolest people, man. He knows the who's who and how. He has great friends, Eddie Lever, the OJ. So they're all his boys. All his boys. So I was able to mingle with those guys till I got kicked out. But anyway, but I was able to again, another one of my childhood heroes, man. I was able to talk to Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, Mr. October himself. I'm a diehard Yankee fan, so I would have been I'd have been nervous as hell.
I had to overcome that mistake because he's had the reputation of being standoffish. So I asked him about he went to high school here outside of Philadelphia.
Yep.
So I was thinking, okay, well, I'm going to ask him to maybe get a photo from him. And I asked him about his old high school, and he looked at me. He was so shocked that I even asked that question. And he was like, oh yeah, he answered it and everything. And I asked, oh yeah, well, and I was off duty at that point. So I was just trying to, make my way through. And I said, okay, I have the photo of you. So, oh yeah, sure. And so, I'll repost it and everything, just so you can see it, or I'll send it to you. But
that's awesome.
Yeah. But this is just all a part of my journey and everything, just looking for my space. And I'm still on that journey now with the Tribune, and I'm learning a lot of different things. Not only, I do sports here and there, I do community stuff. And I get to meet a lot of people, and I get to, go back to my roots and all, as far as, working for, a local paper, and they're one of the longest running African-American newspapers in the country
that's
now.
awesome.
So
that's tremendous.
So that's a good thing there. And, it's allowed me to now cover James Harden. I do that. I'm hoping to cover the March Madness when it comes here for the East Regionals.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes and everything. So, my overall thing is just trying to stay with it. And there's times where I've wanted to quit because it's so difficult being Black and being in journalism. There are a lot of us, but then again, when you look at the whole grand scheme of things, you look at the statistics, it's not a lot of us. It's not a lot. It's still what, under 20% or something like that. And this is why I fight for vocally, and you see me on Twitter saying different things and stuff. And I try to add this, I try to add that, and I just try to, not only do I try to advocate for athletes and just as far as fairness, because we need us in these spaces.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, our Jalen Hurts is a perfect example. And I mean, some of the things that you'll hear about him, and if you just look up Eagles Twitter, if you just um, put it in the on your Twitter feed and you look it up, you'll hear some of the craziest things about Jalen Hurts to say, oh yeah, he's not the guy. I mean, he's going into his second full year as a starter, and you look at the leeway that these white quarterbacks
Oh,
get.
yeah.
I mean, listen, Chris Rock said it best that Black folks will not arrive in this country until we're able to suck at our jobs. You know what I mean? So, and quarterback is really like the poster child of this.
Yeah, no, you're right.
White guys who just suck at being quarterback. And,
The last 10 years getting paid.
Yeah.
I mean,
I saw that.
who did I see today that got signed? Colt McCoy comes to mind. Who's that little guy? Had 2 good years in Missouri. I always see him. Chase Daniels.
Chase Daniel, yes.
Still in the league. Come on,
listen,
man.
He milked the Eagles for about $30 million when he backed up Carson Wentz for a year or two.
Here in DC, our guy Fitzmagic. I mean, come on.
Exactly, because I think Teddy Bridgewater signed with the Dolphins today.
Yep.
For a 1-year deal. I want Teddy to get on that Fitzpatrick, Josh McCown plan. I want him to get on that plan. I want that quarterback to stick around for 15, 20 years like those guys have. Once that happens on a consistent basis, I say, listen, for every Jamarcus Russell, I mean, there are 100 Josh McCowns.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah, you're right about that. That's a good point.
I mean, but those guys aren't able to stay in the league. Nope. I mean, I know Russell had his problems and everything, like the purple drink and all that kind of stuff. But listen, white quarterbacks are signed, day in and day out and say, okay, they know the offense, they know the coach, it's all political. And not
super mediocre.
Right. And not only that, or just bad. Yeah. And not only that, they have a direct pipeline to coaching. We talk about the lack of Black coaches in the NFL. It starts right there.
Yeah, there's a lack of Black availability to the pipeline. We don't have access to the pipeline. That's the biggest problem, in my opinion. We got qualified people, but we just can't we can't even get to the front door to talk to you.
Right, and this is why, good or bad, we got to root for the Brian Leftwiches of the world. Because listen, he won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. He should have been freaking hired.
Yeah, Eric Bieniemy,
running back. He's paid his dues.
For sure,
he paid his dues. The two offensive coordinators before him got head coaching jobs.
Yeah,
Nagy and Peterson. He should have been next in line. There's no freaking excuse why he should not have been next in line. That was the pipeline, but all of a sudden it stops with Bieniemy.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
And I think that's starting to change, but obviously it's never going to be fast enough.
Right. It's never going to be fast enough. And, you look at the numbers are what they are, 70% Black. And, you have few coordinators. You have even fewer, you have few defense coordinators. You have more of those now, but you have even few offensive coordinators, even fewer quarterback coaches, all of those things. So, this is why I want to be in these spaces. And this is why when, we see people like us and, I can think of the names, in spaces, like, your Steve Weiches, your Jim Trotters.
Yeah.
So I got the
big Jim Trotter friend. Jim Trotter's the man.
I got to interview him, thankfully, a few years ago because he wrote a great book on Junior Seau. But a few years back. But, these are guys off the top of my head, that cover the NFL. We need those guys in those spaces because, and I get it and all, you have a lot of people who say, why do we still F with the NFL?
Yeah, I get that a lot. Yep,
why are we why aren't we boycotting it and everything? we need our guys and women, by the way, as well. We need them all in their spaces
Yeah.
because I want to shout out, the the ladies that cover the NFL, cover sports in general, because we need them just as much too, because the different perspective that they give, and they a lot of times they ask better questions than we do
Yeah, I was gonna say one
most
thing
of the
I've
time.
noticed
Like, hey,
quickly in my short career is because it's a male dominated field. A lot of people, not you and I, but there's a
yeah,
lot of guys that
it's
just
twice it's
yeah,
twice as difficult for them,
there's
right?
a lot of guys that just spit out hot takes, and with women, they already know they're going to be scrutinized and looked at because it's a male dominant field. So they do so much more research than we do. That's why, like the Kimberly Martins, the Joy Taylors, these people are bringing it, man. They're like,
Right, Josina Anderson.
yeah,
So
Justina
yeah,
Anderson comes to
yes,
mind.
yep.
Yep.
So yeah, exactly. So and a lot of times they have scoops up quicker than
Yeah,
than a lot of the men do, and they're just as great, if not better, than their jobs, and I stand by that. And
I agree,
that's no
100%.
that's one thing I try to pride myself on. Also, is not giving me hot takes and everything. We all like to
Yeah,
have fun, especially on Twitter and stuff, but it's time to be serious. But like I said, when I get into my bag and all, I try to be present in those spaces because, and I try to, the main thing is I want to add balance as much as I can, as long as I, dab in this business because, I mean, um, it's really one-sided.
yeah.
And,
No, I definitely can say,
it's one thing to criticize black athletes and everything, but you see some of the vitriol that comes behind it. A lot of
mhm.
it's racism, a lot of it's jealousy, because you have a lot of people in this business who are jealous of black athletes, who
Oh,
are
for
just
sure. Yeah,
straight up
absolutely,
envious that
absolutely.
these guys are you know gaining some generational wealth in a non-traditional way.
Yeah. And I'd say too
And
that starting the media career, when I started doing media and going to press conferences, attending games, that's when it really hit me between the eyes. Like, you're the only black person here, and that's the only black girl here, and that was even more fuel for me to keep on doing what I'm doing and trying to build my brand. Because to your point, we had all these people telling stories about athletes, and maybe one person, if you're lucky, was black, and that was just like
yeah,
I got to help to diversify and make sure our voices are heard. And I think that contributes a lot too to some of the people you see getting those scoops. They know that we're grinding twice as hard. We look like them. We've come probably from the same upbringing they did or close to it. So of course they're going to help you if you help them to tell their story.
yeah, and athletes see that, and um, there's been a lot of backlash over the years. It's kind of died down now, but there's been a lot of backlash when athletes started to tell their own stories.
Yeah, I
They
remember that.
started
Yep.
to create their own media
Player
outlets.
Tribune.
Right? Yeah, LeBron James with his uninterrupted, Kevin Durant with the boardroom, all those things. They're starting to tell their own stories because the trust is just not there.
Yep.
And that's not to say, I know several, many, white journalists who are just flat out great at their job. Some that I even looked up to, getting in this business and all, whether it's from journalism or, well, I don't want to say sports talk, but more in the journalism realm where I'll read every day because I trust them because even if you don't agree with them, they're serious at their job and they understand the business and they understand the athlete. And listen, you even have my experience covering teams, covering organizations. You even have people in the organizations who don't understand the black athlete.
Oh yeah, I believe that
They
without a
don't.
doubt. For sure.
They have no clue. When you see something that goes down, a player gets in trouble, or they may say the wrong thing, or it becomes a PR issue. A lot of those teams, they don't have anybody in those spaces that
Nope.
can handle the PR of a black athlete,
Yeah, they don't
or
know where to. They don't know
or
what to
can do
do, where to
damage
start.
control, or
Yep.
even know where these guys come from.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And listen, I'm from the hood, and I'm from the hood of Philadelphia. I'm from West Philly, just like Will Smith is, just like um, Meek Mill is, even though different parts of the city, of course, and stuff. But I mean, to get to the core, to understand, even when an athlete does wrong or they get into trouble or they don't perform like we want them to, we got to get to the core of why that may be happening. We don't get to the why. And it's important for us to be in those spaces because we tend to understand more what that why is. And, that gains a little trust as well. And
Absolutely.
just not to say that there are some of us who, you know, don't take advantage of that where
Yeah.
there's distrust, amongst Black journalists and all. But more often than not, I would think, we do our jobs correctly, that they'll be more eager to come to us and trust us and get a better product because, again, they're defaulting to doing their own media
Yeah.
and
For a
breaking their
reason.
own news. And listen, you're even seeing, some of the white athletes do it now.
Yep.
You see Tom Brady controls his own media.
Yeah, he does. Yep. TB12 everywhere. Everything
Right.
from clothes to
So,
news. You're right.
that lets us know that overall, black or white, that there's a void there. And listen, I understand television. I was a production assistant at one time for a talk show, for a local talk show here. So I understand how television works. I understand how show business works. I was trained how it works and everything. I understand how sports talk works because
Yeah.
I've done it. Hot takes, they get the calls in, they get the ratings
Yeah,
in.
of course.
But
I get you likes and retweets. Yeah, for sure.
right, but it's a fine line between that. And I think at the end of the day, the athletes will see that and they understand that, and some of the coaches too.
No, without a doubt. Well, man, great conversation, OJ. Definitely, like I said before, I can't thank you enough for hopping on the show. Good conversation. I like to hearing about your journey. It's inspirational. I mean, I'm still kind of new to this thing. I've been doing this for about 6 years now, and to hear you kind of almost similar path as my own, that gives me a little bit of more juice in my engine as well. So I appreciate you for sharing that for sure.
Sure, man, stick with it. And I thank you, Joe, for first of all bringing me on and allowing me to, kind of rant a little bit and kind
Oh
of
no, you
for me
fine.
to share my story, which I don't get to do a whole lot. But I thank you for having this avenue, and I appreciate you. And I mean, take off with this thing, man, and just keep it going.
I mean, like you said, when we get together and we talk, black people, we talk.
Yes.
You say
Yes, sir.
5 minutes
Yes,
and an
sir.
hour and a half later, you like, well, I guess I got to go.
There you go. There you go. So yeah, but thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you next time. Talk to you soon.
No problem.
Man, I really want to thank OJ for hopping on with me this week. I had a great conversation. That was super fun. Make sure you follow him on social media, and also make sure you follow all the great and fantastic content we have going on in 19 Media Group, 19mediagroup.com. We definitely run these content streets. Also want to thank you guys for the support, and I will catch you guys next week. Enjoy March Madness and be safe.